Hello there, darling, and welcome to this final part of Twilight Eclipse, with relaxing rain sounds in the background to help you get down to sleep. We've come to the end of the book. Thank you for all of your love on the Twilight series on the channel so far. Be sure to hit that like button and let me know what book you'd like to hear next. But if you don't want the sleepy times to end, come and join me on Patreon for a few dollars a month. You get a new reading of Twilight Breaking Dawn every Thursday night, plus Lord of the Rings on Tuesdays, and over 450 episodes with and without rain, including all of the Twilight books so far, and the side book, The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner. That's at patreon.com/downtosleep. To find out when the next book series starts, make sure you hit that subscribe button or follow the Instagram, as I always post there when a new video goes up. So, thank you for being here. I hope you've had a wonderful start to the spring, and if not, I hope this helps. Let's go ahead and tuck you in. Take a nice deep breath for me, and let's get down to sleep. Eclipse by Stephanie Meyer. There was still nothing to see. I glanced at Edward, and his eyes were locked straight ahead. I tried to follow his gaze, but there was only the smoke. Dense, oily smoke twisting low to the ground, rising lazily, undulating against the grass. It billowed forward, darker in the middle. A dead voice murmured from the mist. I recognized the apathy at once. "Welcome, Jane." Edward's tone was coolly courteous. The dark shapes came closer, separating themselves from the haze, solidifying. I knew it would be Jane in the front, the darkest cloak almost black, the smallest figure by more than 2 feet. I could just barely make out Jane's angelic features in the shade of the cowl. The 4 grey shrouded figures hulking behind her were also somewhat familiar. I was sure I recognized the biggest one, and while I stared, trying to confirm my suspicion, Felix looked up. He let his hood fall back slightly so that I could see him wink at me and smile. Edward was very still at my side, tightly in control. Jane's gaze moved slowly across the luminous faces of the Cullens, and then touched on the newborn girl beside the fire. The newborn had her head in her hands again. "I don't understand." Jane's voice was toneless, but not quite as uninterested as before. "She was surrendered," Edward explained, answering the confusion in her mind. Jane's dark eyes flashed to his face. "Surrendered?" Felix and another shadow exchanged a quick glance. Edward shrugged. Carlyle gave her the option. "There are no options for those who break the rules," Jane said flatly. Carlyle spoke then, his voice mild. "That's in your hands. As long as she was willing to halt her attack on us, I saw no need to destroy her. She was never taught." "That is irrelevant," Jane insisted. "As you wish." Jane stared at Carlyle in consternation. She shook her head infinitesimally and then composed her features. "Aro hoped that we would get far enough west to see you, Carlyle. He sends his regards." Carlyle nodded. "I would appreciate it if you would convey mine to him." "Of course," Jane smiled. Her face was almost too lovely when it was animated. She looked back toward the smoke. "It appears that you've done our work for us today, for the most part." Her eyes flickered to the hostage. "Just out of professional curiosity, how many were there? They left quite a wake of destruction in Seattle." 18, including this one," Carlyle answered. Jane's eyes widened, and she looked at the fire again, seeming to reassess the size of it. Felix and the other shadow exchanged a longer glance. 18, she repeated, her voice sounding unsure for the first time. All brand new, Carlyle said dismissively. They were unskilled. All? Her voice turned sharp. Then who was their creator? Her name was Victoria, Edward answered, no emotion in his voice. Was? Jane asked. Edward inclined his head toward the eastern forest. Jane's eyes snapped up and focused on something far in the distance. The other pillar of smoke? I didn't look away to check. Jane stared to the east for a long moment, and then examined the closer bonfire again. This Victoria, she was in addition to the 18 here. Yes, she had only one other with her. He was not as young as this one here, but no older than a year. 20, Jane breathed. Who dealt with the creator? I did, Edward told her. Jane's eyes narrowed, and she turned to the girl beside the fire. You there, she said, her dead voice harsher than before. Your name? The newborn shot a baleful glare at Jane, her lips pressed tightly together. Jane smiled back angelically. The newborn girl's answering scream was ear-piercing. Her body arched stiffly into a distorted, unnatural position. I looked away, fighting the urge to cover my ears. I gritted my teeth, hoping to control my stomach. The screaming intensified. I tried to concentrate on Edward's face, smooth and unemotional. But that made me remember when it had been Edward under Jane's torturing gaze, and I felt sicker. I looked at Alice instead, and Esme next to her. Their faces were as empty as his. Finally, it was quiet. Your name, Jane said again, her voice inflectionless. Bree, the girl gasped. Jane smiled and the girl shrieked again. I held my breath until the sound of her agony stopped. She'll tell you anything you want to know, Edward said through his teeth. You don't have to do that. Jane looked up, sudden humor in her usually dead eyes. Oh, I know, she said to Edward, grinning at him before she turned back to the young vampire Bree. Bree, Jane said, her voice cold again. Is his story true? Were there 20 of you? The girl lay panting, the side of her face pressed against the earth. She spoke quickly. 19 or 20, maybe more, I don't know. She cringed, terrified that her ignorance might bring on another round of torture. Sarah and the ones whose name I don't know got in a fight on the way. And this Victoria? Did she create you? I don't know, she said, flinching again. Riley never said her name. I didn't see that night. It was so dark. And it hurt. Bree shuddered. He didn't want us to be able to think of her. He said that our thoughts weren't safe. Jane's eyes flickered to Edward, and then back to the girl. Victoria had planned this well. If she hadn't followed Edward, there would have been no way to know for certain that she was involved. Tell me about Riley, Jane said. Why did he bring you here? Riley told us we had to destroy the strange yellow eyes here. Bree babbled quickly and willingly. He said it would be easy. He said the city was theirs and they were coming to get us. He said once they were all gone, all the blood would be ours. He gave us her scent. Bree lifted one hand and stabbed a finger in my direction. He said we would know that we had the right coven, because she would be with them. He said whoever got to her first could have her. I heard Edward's jaw flex beside me. Looks like Riley was wrong about the easy part, Jane noted. Bree nodded, seeming relieved that the conversation had taken this non-painful course. She sat up, carefully. I don't know what happened. We split up, but the others never came, and Riley left us, and he didn't come to help like he promised. And then it was so confusing, and everybody was in pieces. She shuddered again. I was afraid. I wanted to run away. That one, she looked at Carlyle, said they wouldn't hurt me if I stopped fighting. But that wasn't his gift to offer, young one, Jane murmured, her voice oddly gentle now. Broken rules demand a consequence. Bree stared at her, not comprehending. Jane looked at Carlyle. Are you sure you got all of them? The other half that split off? Carlyle's face was very smooth as he nodded. We split up too. Jane half smiled. I can't deny that I'm impressed. The big shadows behind her murmured in agreement. I've never seen a coven escape this magnitude of offensive intact. Do you know what was behind it? Seems like extreme behavior, considering the way you live here. And why was the girl the key? Her eyes rested unwilling on me for one short second. I shivered. Victoria held a grudge against Bella, Edward told her, his voice impassive. Jane laughed. The sound was golden, the bubbling laugh of a happy child. This one seems to bring out bizarrely strong reactions in our kind, she observed, smiling directly at me, her face beatific. Edward stiffened. I looked at him in time to see his face turning away, back to Jane. Would you please not do that? He asked in a tight voice. Jane laughed again lightly. Just checking. No harm done, apparently. I shivered, deeply grateful that the strange glitch in my system, which had protected me from Jane the last time we'd met, was still in effect. Edward's arm tightened around me. Well, it appears that there's not much left for us to do. Odd, Jane said, apathy creeping back into her voice. We're not used to being rendered unnecessary. It's too bad we missed the fight. Sounds like it would have been entertaining to watch. Yes, Edward answered her quickly, his voice sharp. And you were so close. It's a shame you didn't arrive just a half hour earlier. Perhaps then you could have fulfilled your purpose here. Jane met Edward's glare with unwavering eyes. Yes. Quite a pity how things turned out, isn't it? Edward nodded once to himself, his suspicions confirmed. Jane turned to look at the newborn Bree again, her face completely bored. Felix, she drawled. Wait, Edward interjected. Jane raised one eyebrow, but Edward was staring at Carlyle while he spoke in an urgent voice. We could explain the rules to the young one. She doesn't seem unwilling to learn. She didn't know what she was doing. Of course, Carlyle answered. We would certainly be prepared to take responsibility for Bree. Jane's expression was torn between amusement and disbelief. We don't make exceptions, she said, and we don't give second chances. It's bad for our reputation. Which reminds me, Suddenly her eyes were on me again, and her cherubic face dimpled. Caius will be so interested to hear that you're still human, Bella. Perhaps he'll decide to visit. The date is set, Alice told Jane, speaking for the first time. Perhaps we'll come to visit you in a few months. Jane's smile faded, and she shrugged indifferently, never looking at Alice. She turned to face Carlyle. It was nice to meet you, Carlyle. I'd thought Ara was exaggerating. Well, until we meet again. Carlyle nodded, his expression pained. Take care of that, Felix, Jane said, nodding toward Bree, her voice dripping boredom. I want to go home. Don't watch, Edward whispered in my ear. I was only too eager to follow his instruction. I'd seen more than enough for one day, more than enough for one lifetime. I squeezed my eyes tightly together and turned my face into Edward's chest. But I could still hear. There was a deep, rumbling growl, and then a high-pitched keen that was horribly familiar. That sound cut off quickly, and then the only sound was a sickening crunching and snapping. Edward's hand rubbed anxiously against my shoulders. Come, Jane said, and I looked up in time to see the backs of the tall grey cloaks drifting away toward the curling smoke. The incense smell was strong again, fresh. The grey cloaks disappeared into the thick mist. The counter in Alice's bathroom was covered with 1,000 different products, all claiming to beautify a person's surface. Since everyone in this house was both perfect and impermeable, I could only assume she'd brought most of these things with me in mind. I read the labels numbly, struck by the waste. I was careful never to look in the long mirror. Alice combed through my hair with a slow, rhythmic motion. That's enough, Alice, I said tonelessly. I want to go back to La Push. How many hours had I waited for Charlie to finally leave Billy's house so that I could see Jacob? Each minute, not knowing if Jacob was still breathing or not. It seemed like 10 lifetimes. And then, when at last I'd been allowed to go, to see for myself that Jacob was alive, the time had gone so quickly. I felt like I'd barely caught my breath before Alice was calling Edward, insisting that I keep up with this ridiculous sleepover facade. It seemed so insignificant. Jacob's still unconscious, Alice answered. Carlyle or Edward will call you when he's awake. Anyway, you need to go see Charlie. He was there at Billy's house. He saw that Carlyle and Edward are back in from their trip, and he's bound to be suspicious when you get home. I already had my story memorized and corroborated. I don't care. I want to be there when Jacob wakes up. You need to think of Charlie now. You've had a long day. Sorry, I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but that doesn't mean that you can shirk your responsibilities. Her voice was serious, almost chiding. It's more important now than ever that Charlie stays safely in the dark. Play your role first, Bella, and then you can do what you want second. Part of being a Cullen is being meticulously responsible. Of course, she was right. And if not for this same reason, a reason that was more powerful than all my fear and pain and guilt, Carlyle would never have been able to talk me into leaving Jacob's side, unconscious or not. Go home, Alice ordered. Talk to Charlie. Flesh out your alibi. Keep him safe. I stood, and the blood flowed down to my feet, stinging like the pricks of 1,000 needles. I'd been sitting still for a long time. "That dress is adorable on you," Alice cooed. "Huh? Oh, thanks again for the clothes," I mumbled out of courtesy rather than real gratitude. "You need the evidence," Alice said, her eyes innocent and wide. "What's a shopping trip without a new outfit? It's very flattering if I do say so myself." I blinked, unable to remember what she'd dressed me in. I couldn't keep my thoughts from skittering away every few seconds. Insects running from the light. "Jacob is fine, Bella," Alice said, easily interpreting my preoccupation. "There's no hurry. If you realized how much extra morphine Carlyle had to give him, what with his temperature burning it off so quickly, you would know that he's going to be out for a while. At least he wasn't in any pain. Not yet." "Is there anything you want to talk about before you leave?" Alice asked sympathetically. "You must be more than a little traumatized." I knew what she was curious about, but I had other questions. "Will I be like that?" I asked her, my voice subdued. "Like that girl Bree, in the meadow?" There were many things I needed to think of, but I couldn't seem to get her out of my head. The newborn, whose other life was now abruptly over. Her face, twisted with desire for my blood, lingered behind my eyelids. Alice stroked my arm. "Everyone is different, but something like that, yes." I was very still, trying to imagine. "It passes," she promised. "How soon?" She shrugged. "A few years, maybe less. It might be different for you. I've never seen anyone go through this who's chosen it beforehand. Should be interesting to see how that affects you." "Interesting," I repeated. "We'll keep you out of trouble." "I know that. I trust you." My voice was monotone, dead. Alice's forehead puckered. "If you're worried about Carlyle and Edward, I'm sure they'll be fine. I believe Sam is beginning to trust us. Well, to trust Carlyle at least. It's a good thing too. I imagine the atmosphere got a little tense when Carlyle had to re-break the fractures. Please, Alice. Sorry." I took a deep breath to steady myself. Jacob had begun healing too quickly. Some of his bones had set wrong. He'd been out cold for the process, but it was still hard to think about. "Alice, can I ask you a question? About the future?" She was suddenly wary. "You know I don't see everything." "It's not that, exactly, but you do see my future sometimes. Why is that, do you think, when nothing else works on me? Not what Jane can do, or Edward, or Ara." My sentence trailed off with my interest level. My curiosity on this point was fleeting, heavily overshadowed by more pressing emotions. Alice, however, found the question very interesting. "Jasper too, Bella. His talent works on your body just as well as it does on anyone else's. That's the difference. Do you see it? Jasper's abilities affect the body physically. He really does calm your system down or excite it. It's not an illusion. And I see visions of outcomes, not the reasons and thoughts behind the decisions that create them. It's outside the mind. Not an illusion either. Reality, or at least one version of it. But Jane, Edward, Aro, and Dimitri, they work inside the mind. Jane only creates an illusion of pain. She doesn't really hurt your body. You only think you can feel it. You see, Bella, you are safe inside your mind. No one can reach you there. It's no wonder that Ara was so curious about your future abilities. She watched my face to see if I was following her logic. In truth, the words had all started to run together, the syllables and sounds losing their meaning. I couldn't concentrate on them. Still, I nodded, trying to look like I got it. She wasn't fooled. She stroked my cheek and murmured, "He's going to be okay, Bella. I don't need a vision to know that. Are you ready to go? One more thing. Can I ask you another question about the future? I don't want specifics, just an overview." "I'll do my best," she said, doubtful again. "Can you still see me becoming a vampire?" "Oh, that's easy. Sure I do." I nodded slowly. She examined my face, her eyes unfathomable. "Don't you know your own mind, Bella?" "I do. I just wanted to be sure." "I'm only as sure as you are, Bella. You know that. If you were to change your mind, what I see would change or disappear, in your case." I sighed. "That isn't going to happen, though." She put her arms around me. "I'm sorry. I can't really empathize. My first memories of seeing Jasper's face in my future, I always knew that he was where my life was headed. But I can sympathize. I'm so sorry you have to choose between two good things." I shook off her arms. "Don't feel sorry for me. There were people who deserved sympathy. I wasn't one of them. And there wasn't any choice to make. There was just breaking a good heart to attend to now. I'll go deal with Charlie." I drove my truck home, where Charlie was waiting just as suspiciously as Alice had expected. "Hey, Bella, how was your shopping trip?" He greeted me when I walked into the kitchen. He had his arms folded over his chest, his eyes on my face. "Long," I said dully. "We just got back." Charlie assessed my mood. "I guess you already heard about Jake then." "Yep. The rest of the Cullens beat us home. Esme told us where Carlisle and Edward were." "You okay?" "Worried about Jake. As soon as I make dinner, I'm going down to La Push." "I told you those motorcycles were dangerous. I hope this makes you realize I wasn't kidding around." I nodded as I started pulling things out of the fridge. Charlie settled himself in at the table. He seemed to be in a more talkative mood than usual. "I don't think you need to worry about Jake too much. Anyone who can cuss with that kind of energy is going to recover." "Jake was awake when you saw him?" I spun to look at him. "Oh yeah, he was awake. You should have heard him. Actually, it's better that you didn't. I don't think there was anyone in the push who couldn't hear him. I don't know where he picked up that kind of vocabulary, but I hope he hasn't been using that kind of language around you." "He had a pretty good excuse today. How did he look?" "Messed up. His friends carried him in. Good thing they're big boys, 'cause that kid's an armful. Carlisle said his right leg's broken and his right arm, pretty much the whole right side of his body, got crushed when he wrecked the damn bike." Charlie shook his head. "If I ever hear you riding again, Bella..." "No problem there, Dad. You won't. Do you really think Jake's okay?" "Sure, Bella. Don't worry. He was himself enough to tease me." "Tease you?" I echoed in shock. "Yeah. In between insulting somebody's mother and taking the Lord's name in vain," he said. "Bet you're glad she loves Cullen instead of me today, huh, Charlie?" I turned back to the fridge so he couldn't see my face. "And I couldn't argue. Edward's more mature than Jacob when it comes to your safety, I'll give him that much. Jacob's plenty mature, I muttered defensively. I'm sure this wasn't his fault. Weird day today, Charlie mused after a minute. You know, I didn't put much stock in that superstitious crap, but it was odd. It was like Billy knew something bad was going to happen to Jake. He was nervous as a turkey on Thanksgiving all morning. I don't think he heard anything I said to him. And then, weirder than that, remember back in February and March when we had all that trouble with the wolves? I bent down to get a frying pan out of the cupboard and hid there an extra second or two. Yeah, I mumbled. I hope we're not going to have a problem with that again. This morning, we were out in the boat. Billy wasn't paying any attention to me or the fish when, all of a sudden, we could hear wolves yowling in the woods. More than one, and boy, was it loud. It sounded like they were right there in the village. Weirdest part was, Billy turned the boat around and headed straight back to the harbor like they were calling to him personally. Didn't even hear me ask what he was doing. The noise stopped before we got the boat docked, but all of a sudden, Billy was in the biggest hurry not to miss the game. We had hours still. He was mumbling some nonsense about an earlier showing. A live game? I tell you, Bella, it was odd. Well, he found some game he said he wanted to watch, but then he just ignored it. He was on the phone the whole time, calling Sue and Emily, your friend Quill's grandpa. I couldn't quite make out what he was looking for. He just chatted real casual with him. Then, the howling started right outside the house. I never heard anything like it. I had goosebumps on my arms. I asked Billy, had to shout over the noise, if he's been setting traps in his yard. It sounded like the animal was in serious pain. I winced, but Charlie was so caught up in his story that he didn't notice. Of course, I forgot all about that till just this minute, because that's when Jake made it home. 1 minute it's this wolf yowling, and then you couldn't hear it anymore. Jake's cussing drowned it right out. Got a set of lungs on him, that boy does. Charlie paused for a minute, his face thoughtful. Funny that some good should come out of this mess. I didn't think they were ever going to get over that fool prejudice they have against the Cullens down there. Somebody called Carlisle, and Billy was real grateful when he showed up. I thought we should get Jake up to the hospital, but Billy wanted to keep him home. Carlisle agreed. I guess Carlisle knows what's best. Generous of him to sign up for such a long stretch of house calls. And he paused, as if unwilling to say something. He sighed and then continued. And Edward was really nice. He seemed as worried about Jacob as you are, like that was his brother lying there. The look in his eyes. Charlie shook his head. He's a decent guy, Bella. I'll try to remember that. No promises, though. He grinned at me. I won't hold you to it, I mumbled. Charlie stretched his legs and groaned. It's nice to be home. You won't believe how crowded Billy's little place gets. 7 of Jake's friends all squished themselves into that little front room. I could hardly breathe. Have you ever noticed how big those Quileute kids all are? Yeah, I have. Charlie stared at me, his eyes abruptly more focused. Really, Bella? Carlisle said Jake will be up and around in no time. Said it looked a lot worse than it was. He's gonna be fine. I just nodded. Jacob had looked so strangely fragile when I'd hurried down to see him as soon as Charlie had left. He'd had braces everywhere. Carlisle said there was no point in plaster as fast as he was healing. His face had been pale and drawn, deeply unconscious though he was at the time. Breakable. Huge as he was, he had looked very breakable. Maybe that had just been my imagination, coupled with the knowledge that I was going to have to break him. If only I could be struck by lightning and be split in two, preferably painfully. For the first time, giving up being human felt like a true sacrifice. Like it might be too much to lose. I put Charlie's dinner on the table next to his elbow and headed for the door. Bella? Could you wait just a second? Did I forget something? I asked, eyeing his plate. No, I just want to ask you a favor. Charlie frowned and looked at the floor. Have a seat, it won't take long. I sat across from him, a little confused. I tried to focus. What do you need, Dad? Here's the gist of it, Bella. Charlie flushed. Maybe I'm just feeling superstitious after hanging out with Billy while he was being so strange all day. But I have this hunch. I feel like I'm gonna lose you soon. Don't be silly, Dad, I mumbled guiltily. You want me to go to school, don't you? Just promise me one thing. I was hesitant, ready to rescind. Okay? Will you tell me before you do anything major? Before you run off with him or something? Dad, I moaned. I'm serious. I won't kick up a fuss. Just give me some advance notice. Give me a chance to hug you goodbye. Cringing mentally, I held up my hand. This is silly, but if it makes you happy, I promise. Thanks, Bella. I love you, kid. I love you too, Dad. I touched his shoulder and then shoved away from the table. If you need anything, I'll be at Billy's. I didn't look back as I ran out. This was just perfect. Just what I needed right now. I grumbled to myself all the way to the push. Carlisle's black Mercedes was not in front of Billy's house. That was both good and bad. Obviously I needed to talk to Jacob alone, yet I still wished I could somehow hold Edward's hand, like I had before, when Jacob was unconscious. Impossible, but I missed Edward. It had seemed like a very long afternoon alone with Alice. I suppose that made my answer quite obvious. I already knew that I couldn't live without Edward. That fact wasn't going to make this any less painful. I tapped quietly on the front door. Come in, Bella, Billy said. The roar of my truck was easy to recognize. I let myself in. Hey, Billy, is he awake? I asked. He woke up about a half hour ago, just before the doctor left. Go on in. I think he's been waiting for you. I flinched and then took a deep breath. Thanks. I hesitated at the door to Jacob's room, not sure whether to knock. I decided to peek first, hoping, coward that I was, that maybe he'd gone back to sleep. I felt like I could use a few more minutes. I opened the door a crack and leaned hesitantly in. Jacob was waiting for me, his face calm and smooth. The haggard, gaunt look was gone, but only a careful blankness took its place. There was no animation in his dark eyes. It was hard to look at his face, knowing that I loved him. It made more of a difference than I would have thought. I wondered if it had always been this hard for him, all this time. Thankfully, someone had covered him with a quilt. It was a relief not to have to see the extent of the damage. I stepped in and shut the door quietly behind me. Hi, Jake, I murmured. He didn't answer at first. He looked at my face for a long moment. Then, with some effort, he rearranged his expression into a slightly mocking smile. Yeah, I sort of thought it might be like that, he sighed. Today's definitely taken a turn for the worse. First I pick the wrong place, miss the best fight, and Seth gets all the glory. Then Leah has to be an idiot trying to prove she's as tough as the rest of us, and I have to be the idiot who saves her. Now this. He waved his left hand toward me where I hesitated by the door. How are you feeling? I mumbled. What a stupid question. A little stoned. Dr. Fang isn't sure how much pain medication I need, so he's going with trial and error. I think he overdid it. But you're not in pain? No, at least I can't feel my injuries, he said, smiling mockingly again. I bit my lip. I was never going to get through this. Why didn't anyone try to kill me when I wanted to die? The wry humor left his face and his eyes warmed up. His forehead creased like he was worried. How about you? He asked, sounding really concerned. You okay? Me? I stared at him. Maybe he had taken too many drugs. Why? Well, I mean, I was pretty sure that he wouldn't actually hurt you, but I wasn't sure how bad it was going to be. I've been going a little crazy worrying about you ever since I woke up. I didn't know if you were going to be allowed to visit or anything. The suspense was terrible. How did it go? Was he mean to you? I'm sorry if it was bad. I didn't mean for you to have to go through that alone. I was thinking I'd be there. It took me a minute to even understand. He babbled on, looking more and more awkward until I got what he was saying. Then I hurried to reassure him. No, Jake, I'm fine. Too fine, really. Of course he wasn't mean. I wish. His eyes widened in what looked like horror. What? He wasn't even mad at me. He wasn't even mad at you. He's so unselfish, it makes me feel even worse. I wish he would have yelled at me or something. It's not like I don't deserve, well, much worse than getting yelled at, but he doesn't care. He just wants me to be happy. He wasn't mad? Jacob asked, incredulous. No, he was much too kind. Jacob stared for another minute, and then he suddenly frowned. Well, damn, he growled. What's wrong, Jake? Does it hurt? My hands fluttered uselessly as I looked around for his medication. No, he grumbled in a disgusted tone. I can't believe this. He didn't give you an ultimatum or anything? Not even close. What's wrong with you? He scowled and shook his head. I was sort of counting on his reaction. Damn it all. He's better than I thought. The way he said it, though angrier, reminded me of Edward's tribute to Jacob's lack of ethics in the tent this morning, which meant that Jake was still hoping, still fighting. I winced as that stabbed deep. He's not playing any games, Jake, I said quietly. You bet he is. He's playing every bit as hard as I am. Only he knows what he's doing, and I don't. Don't blame me because he's a better manipulator than I am. I haven't been around long enough to learn all his tricks. He isn't manipulating me. Yes, he is. When are you going to wake up and realize he's not as perfect as you think he is? At least he didn't threaten to kill himself to make me kiss him, I snapped. As soon as the words were out, I flushed with chagrin. Wait, pretend that didn't slip out. I swore to myself I wasn't going to say anything about that. He took a deep breath. When he spoke, he was calmer. Why not? Because I didn't come here to blame you for anything. It's true, though, he said evenly. I did do that. I don't care, Jake. I'm not mad. He smiled. I don't care either. I knew you'd forgive me, and I'm glad I did it. I'd do it again. At least I have that much. At least I made you see that you do love me. That's worth something. Is it? Is it really better than if I was still in the dark? Don't you think you ought to know how you feel? Just so that it doesn't take you by surprise someday when it's too late and you married a vampire? I shook my head. No, I didn't mean better for me. I meant better for you. Does it make things better or worse for you having me know that I'm in love with you, when it doesn't make a difference either way? Would it have been better, easier for you if I never clued in? He took my question as seriously as I'd meant it, thinking carefully before he answered. Yes, it's better to have you know, he finally decided. If you hadn't figured it out, I'd have always wondered if your decision would have been different if you had. Now I know. I did everything I could. He dragged in an unsteady breath and closed his eyes. This time, I could not resist the urge to comfort him. I crossed the small room and kneeled by his head, afraid to sit on the bed in case I jostled it and hurt him, and leaned in to touch my forehead to his cheek. Jacob sighed and put his hand on my hair, holding me there. I'm so sorry, Jake. I always knew this was a long shot. It's not your fault, Bella. Not you, too, I moaned. Please. He pulled away to look at me. What? It is my fault, and I'm so sick of being told it's not. He grinned. It didn't touch his eyes. You want me to haul you over the coals? Actually, I think I do. He pursed his lips as he measured how much I meant it. A smile flashed across his face briefly, and then he twisted his expression into a fierce scowl. Kissing me back like that was inexcusable. He spit the words at me. If you knew you were just going to take it back, maybe you shouldn't have been quite so convincing about it. I winced and nodded. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't make anything better, Bella. What were you thinking? I wasn't, I whispered. You should have told me to go die. That's what you want. No, Jacob, I whimpered, fighting against the building tears. Never. You're not crying, he demanded, his voice suddenly back to its normal tone. He twitched impatiently on the bed. Yeah, I muttered, laughing weakly at myself through the tears that were suddenly sobs. He shifted his weight, throwing his good leg off the bed as if he were going to try to stand. What are you doing? I demanded through the tears. Lie down, you idiot, you'll hurt yourself. I jumped to my feet and pushed his good shoulder down with 2 hands. He surrendered, leaning back with a gasp of pain, but he grabbed me around my waist and pulled me down on the bed, against his good side. I curled up there, trying to stifle the silly sobs against his hot skin. I can't believe you're crying, he mumbled. You know I just said those things because you wanted me to. I didn't mean them. His hand rubbed against my shoulders. I know. I took a deep, ragged breath, trying to control myself. How did I end up being the one crying while he did the comforting? It's all still true, though. Thanks for saying it out loud. Do I get points for making you cry? Sure, Jake. I tried to smile. As many as you want. Don't worry, Bella, honey. It's all gonna work out. I don't see how, I muttered. He patted the top of my head. I'm going to give in and be good. More games, I wondered, tilting my chin so that I could see his face. Maybe. He laughed with a bit of effort, and then winced. But I'm going to try. I frowned. Don't be so pessimistic, he complained. Give me a little credit. What do you mean by be good? I'll be your friend, Bella, he said quietly. I won't ask for more than that. I think it's too late for that, Jake. How can we be friends when we love each other like this? He looked at the ceiling, his stare intent, as if he were reading something that was written there. Maybe it'll have to be a long-distance friendship. I clenched my teeth together, glad he wasn't looking at my face, fighting against the sobs that threatened to overtake me again. I needed to be strong, and I had no idea how. You know that story in the Bible? Jacob asked, suddenly, still reading the blank ceiling. The one with the king and the two women fighting over the baby. Sure, King Solomon. That's right, King Solomon. And he said, cut the kid in half, but it was only a test, just to see who would give up their share to protect it. Yeah, I remember. He looked back at my face. I'm not going to cut you in half anymore, Bella. I understood what he was saying. He was telling me that he loved me the most, that his surrender proved it. I wanted to defend Edward, to tell Jacob how Edward would do the same thing if I wanted, if I would let him. I was the one who wouldn't renounce my claim there. But there was no point in starting an argument that would only hurt him more. I closed my eyes, willing myself to control the pain. I couldn't impose that on him. We were quiet for a moment. He seemed to be waiting for me to say something. I was trying to think of something to say. Can I tell you what the worst part is? He asked, hesitantly when I said nothing. Do you mind? I am gonna be good. Will it help? I whispered. It might. Couldn't hurt. What's the worst part then? The worst part is knowing what would have been. What might have been, I sighed. No, Jacob shook his head. I'm exactly right for you, Bella. It would have been effortless for us. Comfortable. Easy as breathing. I was the natural path your life would have taken. He stared into space for a moment, and I waited. If the world was the way it was supposed to be, if there were no monsters and no magic, I could see what he saw, and I knew that he was right. If the world was the same place it was supposed to be, Jacob and I would have been together, and we would have been happy. He was my soulmate in that world, would have been my soulmate still if his claim had not been overshadowed by something stronger. Something so strong that it could not exist in a rational world. Was it out there for Jacob too? Something that would trump a soulmate? I had to believe it was. 2 futures, 2 soulmates. Too much for any one person, and so unfair that I wouldn't be the only one to pay for it. Jacob's pain seemed too high a price. Cringing at the thought of that price, I wondered if I would have wavered, if I hadn't lost Edward once, if I didn't know what it was like to live without him. I wasn't sure. That knowledge was so deep a part of me. I couldn't imagine how I would feel without it. He's like a drug for you, Bella. His voice was still gentle, not at all critical. I see that you can't live without him now. It's too late. But I would have been healthier for you. Not a drug. I would have been the air. The sun. The corner of my mouth turned up in a wistful half-smile. I used to think of you that way, you know? Like my son. My personal son. You balanced out the clouds nicely for me. He sighed. Clouds I can handle, but I can't fight with an eclipse. I touched his face, laying my hand against his cheek. He exhaled at my touch and closed his eyes. It was very quiet. For a minute, I could hear the beating of his heart, slow and even. Tell me the worst part for you, he whispered. I think that might be a bad idea. Please. I think it'll hurt. Please. How could I deny him anything at this point? The worst part. I hesitated, and then let the words spill out in a flood of truth. The worst part is that I saw the whole thing. Our whole life. And I want it bad, Jake. I want it all. I want to stay right here and never move. I want to love you and make you happy. And I can't. And it's killing me. It's like Sam and Emily. Jake, I never had a choice. I always knew nothing would change. Maybe that's why I was fighting against you so hard. He seemed to be concentrating on breathing evenly. I knew I shouldn't have told you that. He shook his head slowly. No, I'm glad you did. Thank you. He kissed the top of my head and then he sighed. I'll be good now. I looked up and he was smiling. So you're going to get married, huh? We don't have to talk about that. I'd like to know some of the details. I don't know when I'll talk to you again. I had to wait for a minute before I could speak. When I was pretty sure that my voice wouldn't break, I answered his question. It's not really my idea, but yes, it means a lot to him. I figure why not? Jake nodded. That's true. It's not such a big thing in comparison. His voice was very calm, very practical. I stared at him, curious about how he was managing, and that ruined it. He met my eyes for a second and then twisted his head away. I waited to speak until his breathing was under control. Yes, in comparison, I agreed. How long do you have left? Depends on how long it takes Alice to put a wedding together. I suppressed a groan, imagining what Alice would do. Before or after? He asked quietly. I knew what he meant. After. He nodded. This was a relief to him. I wondered how many sleepless nights the thought of my graduation had given him. Are you scared? He whispered. Yes, I whispered back. What are you afraid of? I could barely hear his voice now. He stared down at my hands. Lots of things. I worked to make my voice lighter, but I stayed honest. I've never been much of a masochist, so I'm not looking forward to the pain. And I wish there was some way to keep him away. I don't want him to suffer with me, but I don't think there's any way around it. There's dealing with Charlie, too, and Renee. And then afterward, I hope I'll be able to control myself soon. Maybe I'll be such a menace the pack will have to take me out. He looked up with a disapproving expression. I'd hamstring any one of my brothers who tried. Thanks. He smiled half-heartedly. Then he frowned. But isn't it more dangerous than that? In all the stories, they say it's too hard. They lose control. People die. He gulped. No, I'm not afraid of that, silly Jacob. Don't you know better than to believe vampire stories? He obviously didn't appreciate my attempt at humor. Well, anyway, lots to worry about, but worth it in the end. He nodded unwillingly, and I knew that he in no way agreed with me. I stretched my neck to whisper in his ear, laying my cheek against his warm skin. You know I love you. I know, he breathed, his arm tightening automatically around my waist. You know how much I wish it was enough. Yeah. I'll always be waiting in the wings, Bella, he promised, lightening his tone and loosening his arm. I pulled away with a dull, dragging sense of loss, feeling the tearing separation as I left a part of me behind, there on the bed next to him. You'll always have that spare option, if you want it. I made an effort to smile, until my heart stops beating. He grinned back. I think I'd still take you. Maybe. I guess that depends on how much you stink. Should I come back to see you? Or would you rather I didn't? I'll think it through and get back to you. I might need the company to keep me from going crazy. The vampire surgeon extraordinaire says I can't phase till he gives me the okay. Might mess up the way my bones are set. Jacob made a face. Be good. Do what Carlisle tells you to do. You'll get well faster. Sure. I wonder when it'll happen, I said. When the right girl's gonna catch your eye. Don't get your hopes up, Bella. Jacob's voice was abruptly sour. Though I'm sure it'd be a relief to you. Maybe. Maybe not. I probably won't think she's good enough for you. I wonder how jealous I'll be. That part might be kind of fun, he admitted. Let me know if you want me to come back, and I'll be here. I promised. With a sigh, he turned his cheek toward me. I leaned in and kissed his face softly. Love you, Jacob. He laughed lightly. Love you more. He watched me walk out of his room, with an unfathomable expression in his black eyes. I didn't get very far before driving became impossible. When I couldn't see anymore, I let my tires find the rough shoulder and rolled slowly to a stop. I slumped over on the seat and allowed the weakness I'd fought in Jacob's room crush me. It was worse than I'd thought. The force of it took me by surprise. Yes, I had been right to hide this from Jacob. No one should ever see this. But I wasn't alone for very long. Just exactly long enough for Alice to see me here, and then the few minutes it took him to arrive. The door creaked open, and he pulled me into his arms. At first it was worse, because there was that smaller part of me, smaller but getting louder and angrier every minute, screaming at the rest of me that craved a different set of arms. So then there was fresh guilt to season the pain. He didn't say anything. He just let me sob until I began to blubber out Charlie's name. Are you really ready to go home? He asked doubtfully. I managed to convey after several attempts that it wasn't going to get any better anytime soon. I needed to get past Charlie before it got late enough for him to call Billy. So he drove me home. For once, not even getting close to my truck's internal speed limit. Keeping one arm wrapped tightly around me. The whole way I fought for control. It seemed to be a doomed effort at first, but I didn't give up. Just a few seconds, I told myself. Just time for a few excuses or a few lies, and then I could break down again. I had to be able to do that much. I scrambled around in my head, searching desperately for a reserve of strength. There was just enough for me to quiet the sobs, hold them back, but not end them. The tears didn't slow. I couldn't seem to find any handle to even begin to work with those. Wait for me upstairs, I mumbled when we were in front of the house. He hugged me closer for 1 minute, and then he was gone. Once inside, I headed straight for the stairs. Bella? Charlie called after me from his usual place on the sofa as I walked by. I turned to look at him without speaking. His eyes bugged wide and he lurched to his feet. What happened? Is Jacob? He demanded. I shook my head furiously, trying to find my voice. He's fine. He's fine, I promised, my voice low and husky. And Jacob was fine, physically, which is all Charlie was worried about at the moment. What happened? He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes still anxious and wide. What happened to you? I must look worse than I'd imagined. Nothing, Dad. I just had to talk to Jacob about some things that were hard. I'm fine. The anxiety calmed. and was replaced by disapproval. "Was this really the best time?" he asked. "Probably not, Dad, but I didn't have any alternatives. It just got to the point where I had to choose. Sometimes there isn't any way to compromise." He shook his head slowly. "How'd he handle it?" I didn't answer. He looked at my face for a minute, and then nodded. That must have been answer enough. "I hope you didn't mess up his recovery." "He's a quick healer," I mumbled. Charlie sighed. I could feel the control slipping. "I'll be in my room," I told him, shrugging out from underneath his hands. "Okay," Charlie agreed. He could probably see the waterworks starting to escalate. Nothing scared Charlie worse than tears. I made my way to my room, blind and stumbling. Once inside, I fought with the clasp on my bracelet, trying to undo it with shaking fingers. "No, Bella," Edward whispered, capturing my hands. "It's part of who you are." He pulled me into the cradle of his arms as the sobs broke free again. This longest of days seemed to stretch on and on and on. I wondered if it would ever end. But though the night dragged relentlessly, it was not the worst night of my life. I took comfort from that. And I was not alone. There was a great deal of comfort in that, too. Charlie's fear of emotional outbursts kept him from checking on me. Though I was not quiet, he probably got no more sleep than I did. My hindsight seemed unbearably clear tonight. I could see every mistake I'd made, every bit of harm I'd done, the small things and the big things. Each pain I'd caused Jacob, each wound I'd given Edward, stacked up into neat piles that I could not ignore or deny. And I realized I'd been wrong all along about the magnets. It had not been Edward and Jacob that I'd been trying to force together. It was the two parts of myself, Edward's Bella and Jacob's Bella. But they could not exist together, and I never should have tried. I'd done so much damage. At some point in the night, I remembered the promise I'd made to myself early this morning, that I would never make Edward see me shed another tear for Jacob Black. The thought brought on a round of hysteria which frightened Edward more than the weeping. But it passed, too, when it had run its course. Edward said little. He just held me on the bed and let me ruin his shirt, staining it with salt water. It took longer than I thought it would for that smaller, broken part of me to cry herself out. It happened, though, and I was eventually exhausted enough to sleep. Unconsciousness did not bring full relief from the pain, just a numbing, dulling ease, like medicine. Made it more bearable, but it was still there. I was aware of it, even asleep, and that helped me to make the adjustments I needed to make. The morning brought with it, if not a brighter outlook, at least a measure of control, some acceptance. Instinctively, I knew that the new tear in my heart would always ache. That was just going to be a part of me now. Time would make it easier. That's what everyone always said. But I didn't care if time healed me or not. So long as Jacob could get better, could be happy again. When I woke up, there was no disorientation. I opened my eyes, finally dry, and met his anxious gaze. "Hey," I said. My voice was hoarse. I cleared my throat. He didn't answer. He watched me, waiting for it to start. "No, I'm fine," I promised. "That won't happen again." His eyes tightened at my words. I'm sorry you had to see that, I said. That wasn't fair to you. He put his hands on either side of my face. Bella, are you sure? Did you make the right choice? I've never seen you in so much pain. His voice broke on the last word. But I had known worse pain. I touched his lips. Yes. I don't know. His brow creased. If it hurts you so much, how can it possibly be the right thing for you? Edward, I know who I can't live without. But... I shook my head. You don't understand. You may be brave enough or strong enough to live without me, if that's what's best. But I could never be that self-sacrificing. I have to be with you. It's the only way I can live. He still looked dubious. I should never have let him stay with me last night, but I had needed him so much. Hand me that book, will you? I asked, pointing over his shoulder. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion, but he gave it to me quickly. This again? He asked. I just wanted to find this one part I remembered, to see how she said it. I flipped through the book, finding the page I wanted easily. The corner was dog-eared from the many times I'd stopped here. Kathy's a monster, but there were a few things she got right, I muttered. I read the lines quietly, mostly to myself. If all else perished, and he remained, I should still continue to be. And if all else remained, and he were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. I nodded again to myself. I know exactly what she means, and I know who I can't live without. Edward took the book from my hands and flipped it across the room. It landed with a light thud on my desk. He wrapped his arms around my waist. A small smile lit his perfect face, though worry still lined his forehead. Heathcliff had his moments too, he said. He didn't need the book to get it word perfect. He pulled me closer and whispered in my ear, I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. Yes, I said quietly. That's my point. Bella, I can't stand for you to be miserable. Maybe... No, Edward. I've made a real mess of things, and I'm going to have to live with that. But I know what I want, and what I need, and what I'm going to do now. What are we going to do now? I smiled just a bit at his correction, and then I sighed. We are going to go see Alice. Alice was on the bottom porch step, too hyper to wait for us inside. She looked about to break into a celebration dance, so excited was she about the news she knew I was there to deliver. Thank you, Bella, she sang as we got out of the truck. Hold it, Alice, I warned her, lifting a hand up to hold her glee. I've got a few limitations for you. I know. I only have until August 13th at the latest. You have veto power on the guest list, and if I go overboard on anything, you'll never speak to me again. Oh. Okay, well, yeah, you know the rules then. Don't worry, Bella. It'll be perfect. Do you want to see your dress? I had to take a few deep breaths. Whatever makes her happy, I said to myself. Sure. Alice's smile was smug. Alice, I said, keeping the casual, unruffled tone in my voice. When did you get me a dress? It probably wasn't much of a show. Edward squeezed my hand. Alice led the way inside, heading for the stairs. These things take time, Bella, Alice explained. Her tone seemed evasive. I mean, I wasn't sure things were going to turn out this way, but there was a distinct possibility. When? I asked again. Perrin Bruyer has a waiting list, you know, she said, defensive now. Fabric masterpieces don't happen overnight. If I hadn't thought ahead, you'd be wearing something off the rack. It didn't look like I was going to get a straight answer. Per who? He's not a major designer, Bellis. There's no need to throw a hissy fit. He's got promise, though, and he specializes in what I needed. I'm not throwing a fit. No, you're not. She eyed my calm face suspiciously. Then, as we walked into her room, she turned on Edward. You, out. Why? I demanded. Bella, she groaned. You know the rules. He's not supposed to see the dress till the day of. I took another deep breath. It doesn't matter to me, and you know he's already seen it in your head, but if that's how you want it. She shoved Edward back out the door. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were on me, wary, afraid to leave me alone. I nodded, hoping my expression was tranquil enough to reassure him. Alice shut the door in his face. All right, she muttered. Come on. She grabbed my wrist and towed me to her closet, which was bigger than my bedroom, and then dragged me to the back corner, where a long white garment bag had a rack all to itself. She unzipped the bag in one sweeping movement, and then slipped it carefully off the hanger. She took a step back, holding her hand out to the dress like she was a game show hostess. Well? She asked breathlessly. I appraised it for a long moment, playing with her a bit. Her expression turned worried. Ah, I said, and I smiled, letting her relax. I see. What do you think? She demanded. It was my Anne of Green Gables vision all over again. It's perfect. Of course. Exactly right. You're a genius. She grinned. I know. 1918, I guessed. More or less, she said, nodding. Some of it is my design, the train, the veil. She touched the white satin as she spoke. The lace is vintage. Do you like it? It's beautiful. It's just right for him. But is it just right for you? She insisted. Yes, I think it is, Alice. I think it's just what I need. I know you'll do a great job with this, if you can keep yourself in check. She beamed. Can I see your dress? I asked. She blinked, her face blank. Didn't you order your bridesmaid dress at the same time? Wouldn't want my maid of honor to wear something off the rack. I pretended to wince in horror. She threw her arms around my waist. Thank you, Bella. How could you not see that one coming? I teased, kissing her spiky hair. Some psychic you are. Alice danced back, and her face was bright with fresh enthusiasm. I've got so much to do. Go play with Edward. I have to get to work. She dashed out of the room, yelling, Esme, as she disappeared. I followed at my own pace. Edward was waiting for me in the hallway, leaning against the wood-panelled wall. That was very, very nice of you, he told me. She seems happy, I agreed. He touched my face. His eyes, too dark, it had been so long since he had left me, searched my expression minutely. Let's get out of here, he suddenly suggested. Let's go to our meadow. It sounded very appealing. I guess I don't have to hide out anymore, do I? No. The danger is behind us. He was quiet, thoughtful as he ran. The wind blew on my face, warmer now that the storm had really passed. The clouds covered the sky the way they usually did. The meadow was a peaceful, happy place today. Patches of summer daisies interrupted the grass with splashes of white and yellow. I lay back, ignoring the slight dampness of the ground, and looked for pictures in the clouds. They were too even, too smooth. No pictures, just a soft grey blanket. Edward lay next to me and held my hand. August 13th, he asked casually after a few minutes of comfortable silence. That gives me a month till my birthday. I didn't want to cut it too close. He sighed. Esme's 3 years older than Carlisle, technically. Did you know that? I shook my head. Hasn't made any difference to them. My voice was serene, a counterpoint to his anxiety. My age is not really that important, Edward. I'm ready. I've chosen my life. Now I want to start living it. He stroked my hair. The guest list veto? I don't care really, but I hesitated, not wanting to explain this one. Best to get it over with. I'm not sure if Alice would feel the need to invite a few werewolves. I don't know if Jake would feel like he should come, like that's the right thing to do, or that I'd get my feelings hurt if he didn't. He shouldn't have to go through that. Edward was quiet for a minute. I stared at the tips of the treetops, almost black against the light grey of the sky. Suddenly, Edward grabbed me around the waist and pulled me onto his chest. Tell me why you're doing this, Bella. Why did you decide, now, to give Alice free rein? I repeated for him the conversation I had with Charlie last night before I'd gone to see Jacob. It wouldn't be fair to keep Charlie out of this, I concluded. And that means Renee and Phil. I might as well let Alice have her fun too. Maybe it'll make the whole thing easier for Charlie if he gets his proper goodbye. Even if he thinks it's much too early. I wouldn't want to cheat him out of the chance to walk me down the aisle. I grimaced at the words, then took another deep breath. At least my mum and dad and my friends will know the best part of my choice. The most I'm allowed to tell them. They'll know I chose you. And they'll know we're together. They'll know I'm happy, wherever I am. I think that's the best I can do for them. Edward held my face, searching it for a brief time. Deal's off, he said abruptly. What? I gasped. You're backing out? No. I'm not backing out, Bella. I'll still keep my side of the bargain. But you're off the hook. Whatever you want. No strings attached. Why? Bella, I see what you're doing. You're trying to make everyone else happy. And I don't care about anyone else's feelings. I only need you to be happy. Don't worry about breaking the news to Alice, I'll take care of it. I promise she won't make you feel guilty. But no, we're doing this your way. Because my way doesn't work. I call you stubborn, but look at what I've done. I've clung with such idiotic obstinacy to my idea of what's best for you. Though it's only hurt you. Hurt you so deeply, time and time again, I don't trust myself anymore. You can have happiness your way. My way is always wrong, so... He shifted under me, squaring his shoulders. We're doing it your way, Bella. Tonight, today, the sooner the better. I'll speak to Carlisle. I was thinking that maybe if we gave you enough morphine, it wouldn't be so bad. It's worth a try. He gritted his teeth. Edward, no. He put his finger to my lips. Don't worry, Bella, love. I haven't forgotten the rest of your demands. His hands were in my hair, his lips moving softly but very seriously against mine. Before I realized what he was saying, what he was doing. There wasn't much time to act. If I waited too long, I wouldn't be able to remember why I needed to stop him. Already I couldn't breathe right. My hands were gripping his arms, pulling myself tighter to him, my mouth glued to his and answering every unspoken question his asked. I tried to clear my head, find a way to speak. He rolled gently, pressing me into the cool grass. Oh, never mind, my less noble side exulted. My head was full of the sweetness of his breath. No, I argued with myself. I shook my head and his mouth moved to my neck, giving me a chance to breathe. Stop, Edward, wait. My voice was as weak as my will. Why? He whispered into the hollow of my throat. I labored to put some resolve into my tone. I don't want to do this now. Don't you? He asked, a smile in his voice. He moved his lips back to mine and made speaking impossible. Heat coursed through my veins, burning where my skin touched his. I made myself focus. It took a great deal of effort just to force my hands to free themselves from his hair, to move them to his chest. But I did it. And then I shoved against him, trying to push him away. I could not succeed alone, but he responded as I knew he would. He pulled back a few inches to look at me, and his eyes did nothing to help my resolve. They were black fire. They smoldered. Why? He asked again, his voice low and rough. I love you. I want you. Right now. The butterflies in my stomach flooded my throat. He took advantage of my speechlessness. Wait, I tried to say around his lips. Not for me, he murmured in disagreement. Please? I gasped. He groaned and pushed himself away from me, rolling onto his back again. We both lay there for a minute, trying to slow our breathing. Tell me why not, Bella, he demanded. This had better not be about me. Everything in my world was about him. What a silly thing to expect. Edward, this is very important to me. I am going to do this right. Whose definition of right? Mine. He rolled onto his elbow and stared at me, his expression disapproving. How are you going to do this right? I took a deep breath. Responsibly. Everything in the right order. I will not leave Charlie and Renee without the best resolution I can give them. I won't deny Alice her fun if I'm having a wedding anyway. And I will tie myself to you in every human way before I ask you to make me immortal. I'm following all the rules, Edward. Your soul is far, far too important to me to take chances with. You're not going to budge me on this. I bet I could, he murmured, his eyes burning again. But you wouldn't, I said, trying to keep my voice level, not knowing that this is what I really need. You don't fight fair, he accused. I grinned at him. Never said I did. He smiled back, wistful. If you change your mind, you'll be the first to know, I promised. The rain started to drip through the clouds just then. A few scattered drops that made faint thuds as they struck the grass. I glowered at the sky. I'll get you home. He brushed the tiny beads of water from my cheeks. Rain's not the problem, I grumbled. Just means that it's time to go do something that'll be very unpleasant and possibly even highly dangerous. His eyes widened in alarm. It's a good thing you're bulletproof, I sighed. I'm gonna need that ring. It's time to tell Charlie. He laughed at the expression on my face. Highly dangerous, he agreed. He laughed again, and then reached into the pocket of his jeans. But at least there's no need for a side trip. He once again slid my ring into place on the third finger of my left hand, where it would stay, conceivably, for the rest of eternity. The end. Epilogue. Choice. Jacob Black. Jacob, do you think this is going to take too much longer? Leah demanded, impatient, whiny. My teeth clenched together. Like anyone in the pack, Leah knew everything. She knew why I came here, to the very edge of the earth and sky and sea. To be alone. She knew that this was all I wanted. Just to be alone. But Leah was going to force her company on me anyway. Besides being crazy annoyed, I did feel smug for a brief second. Because I didn't even have to think about controlling my temper. It was easy now. Something I just did, natural. The red haze didn't wash over my eyes. The heat didn't shiver down my spine. My voice was calm when I answered. Jump off a cliff, Leah. I pointed to the one at my feet. Really, kid? She ignored me, throwing herself into a sprawl on the ground next to me. You have no idea how hard this is for me. For you? It took me a minute to believe she was serious. You have to be the most self-absorbed person alive, Leah. I'd hate to shatter the dream world you live in. The one where the sun is orbiting the place where you stand, so I won't tell you how little I care what your problem is. Go away. Just look at this from my perspective for a minute, okay? She continued as if I hadn't said anything. If she was trying to break my mood, it worked. I started laughing. The sound heard in strange ways. Stop snorting and pay attention, she snapped. If I pretend to listen, will you leave? I asked, glancing over at the permanent scowl on her face. I wasn't sure if she had any other expressions anymore. I remembered back to when I used to think that Leah was pretty, maybe even beautiful. That was a long time ago. No one thought of her that way now, except for Sam. He was never going to forgive himself, like it was his fault that she'd turned into this bitter harpy. Her scowl heated up, as if she could guess what I was thinking. Probably could. This is making me sick, Jacob. Can you imagine what this feels like to me? I don't even like Bella Swan, and you've got me grieving over this leech lover like I'm in love with her too. Can you see where that might be a little confusing? I dreamed about kissing her last night. What the hell am I supposed to do with that? Do I care? I can't stand being in your head anymore. Get over her already. She's gonna marry that thing. He's gonna try to change her into one of them. Time to move on, boy. Shut up, I growled. It would be wrong to strike back, I knew that. I was biting my tongue. But she'd be sorry if she didn't walk away now. He'll probably just kill her anyway, Leah said, sneering. All the stories say that happens more often than not. Maybe a funeral will be better closure than a wedding, huh? This time, I had to work. I closed my eyes and fought the hot taste in my mouth. I pushed and shoved against the slide of fire down my back, wrestling to keep my shape together while my body tried to shake apart. When I was in control again, I glowered at her. She was watching my hands as the tremors slowed, smiling. Some joke. If you're upset about gender confusion, Leah, I said, slow, emphasizing each word, how do you think the rest of us like looking at Sam through your eyes? It's bad enough that Emily has to deal with your fixation. She doesn't need us guys panting after him too. Pissed as I was, I still felt guilty when I watched the spasm of pain shoot across her face. She scrambled to her feet, pausing only to spit in my direction, and ran for the trees, vibrating like a tuning fork. I laughed darkly. You missed. Sam was going to give me hell for that, but it was worth it. Leah wouldn't bug me anymore, and I'd do it again if I had the chance. Because her words were still there, scratching themselves into my brain. The pain of it so strong that I could hardly breathe. It didn't matter so much that Bella had chosen someone else over me. That agony was nothing at all, that agony I could live with for the rest of my stupid, too long stretched out life. But it did matter that she was giving up everything. That she was letting her heart stop and her skin ice over, and her mind twist into some crystallized predator's head. A monster. A stranger. I would have thought there was nothing worse than that. Nothing more painful in the whole world. But if he killed her... Again, I had to fight the rage. Maybe if not for Leah, it would be good to let the heat change me into a creature who could deal with it better. A creature with instincts so much stronger than human emotions. An animal who couldn't feel pain in the same way. A different pain. Some variety at least. But Leah was running now, and didn't want to share her thoughts. I cussed her under my breath for taking away that escape too. My hands were shaking in spite of me. What shook them? Anger. Agony. I wasn't sure what I was fighting now. I had to believe that Bella would survive, but that required trust. A trust I didn't want to feel. A trust in that bloodsucker's ability to keep her alive. She would be different, and I wondered how that would affect me. Would it be the same as if she had died? To see her standing there like stone, like ice, when her scent burned in my nostrils and triggered the instinct to rip, to tear. How would that be? Could I want to kill her? Could I not want to kill one of them? I watched the swells roll toward the beach. They disappeared from sight under the edge of this cliff, but I heard them beat against the sand. I watched them until it was late, long after dark. Going home was probably a bad idea, but I was hungry, and I couldn't think of another plan. I made a face as I pulled my arm through the sling and grabbed my crutches. If only Charlie hadn't seen me that day, spread word of my motorcycle accident. Stupid props. I hated them. Going hungry started to look better when I walked in the house and got a look at my dad's face. He had something on his mind, it was easy to tell. He always overdid it. Acted all casual. He also talked too much. He was rambling about his day before I could get to the table. He never jabbered like this unless there was something that he didn't want to say. I ignored him as best as I could, concentrating on the food. The faster I choked it down. And Sue stopped by today. My dad's voice was loud, hard to ignore, as always. Amazing woman. She's tougher than grizzlies, that one. I don't know how she deals with that daughter of hers. Now Sue, she would have made one hell of a wolf. Leah's more of a Wolverine. He chuckled at his own joke. He waited briefly for my response, but didn't seem to see my blank, bored out of my mind expression. Most days that bugged him. I wished he would shut up about Leah. I was trying not to think about her. Seth's a lot easier, of course. You were easier than your sisters, too, until... Well, you have more to deal with than they did. I sighed, long and deep, and stared out the window. Billy was quiet for a second too long. We got a letter today. I could tell that this was the subject he'd been avoiding. A letter? A wedding invitation. Every muscle in my body locked into place. A feather of heat seemed to brush down my back. I held onto the table to keep my hands steady. Billy went on like he hadn't noticed. There's a note inside. It's addressed to you. I didn't read it. He pulled a thick ivory envelope from where it was wedged between his leg and the side of his wheelchair. He laid it on the table between us. You probably don't need to read it. It doesn't really matter what it says. Stupid reverse psychology. I yanked the envelope off the table. It was some heavy, stiff paper. Expensive. Too fancy for forks. The card inside was the same. Too done up and formal. Bella had had nothing to do with this. There was no sign of her personal taste in the layers of see-through petal-printed pages. I'd bet she didn't like it at all. I didn't read the words. Not even to see the date. I didn't care. There was a piece of the thick ivory paper folded in half with my name handwritten in black ink on the back. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but it was as fancy as the rest of it. For half a second I wondered if the bloodsucker was into gloating. I flipped it open. Jacob, I'm breaking the rules by sending you this. She was afraid of hurting you, and she didn't want to make you feel obligated in any way. But I know that if things had gone the other way, I would have wanted the choice. I promise I will take care of her, Jacob. Thank you. For her. For everything. Edward. Jake, we only have the one table, Billy said. He was staring at my left hand. My fingers were clamped down on the wood hard enough that it really was in danger. I loosened them one by one, concentrating on that action alone, and then clenched my hands together so I couldn't break anything. Yeah, it doesn't matter anyway, Billy muttered. I got up from the table, shrugging out of my t-shirt as I stood. Hopefully Leah had gone home by now. Not too late, Billy mumbled as I punched the front door out of my way. I was running before I hit the trees, my clothes strewn out behind me like a trail of crumbs, as if I wanted to find my way back. It was almost too easy now to face. I didn't have to think. My body already knew where I was going, and before I asked it to, it gave me what I wanted. I had 4 legs now, and I was flying. The trees blurred into a sea of black flowing around me. My muscles bunched and released in an effortless rhythm. I could run like this for days, and I would not be tired. Maybe this time, I wouldn't stop. But I wasn't alone. So sorry, Embry whispered in my head. I could see through his eyes. He was far away to the north, but he had wheeled around and was racing to join me. I growled and pushed myself faster. Wait for us, Quill complained. He was closer, just starting out from the village. Leave me alone, I snarled. I could feel their worry in my head. Try hard as I might to drown it in the sound of the wind and the forest. This was what I hated most. Seeing myself through their eyes. Worse now that their eyes were full of pity. They saw the hate, but they kept running after me. A new voice sounded in my head. Let him go. Sam's thought was soft, but still an order. Embry and Quill slowed to a walk. If only I could stop hearing. Stop seeing what they saw. My head was so crowded, but the only way to be alone again was to be human. And I couldn't stand the pain. Phase back, Sam directed them. I'll pick you up, Embry. First one, then another. Awareness faded into silence. Only Sam was left. Thank you, I managed to think. Come home when you can. The words were faint, trailing off into blank emptiness as he left too. And I was alone. So much better. Now I could hear the faint rustle of the matted leaves beneath my toenails. The whisper of an owl's wings above me. The ocean. Far, far in the west, moaning against the beach. Hear this and nothing more. Feel nothing but speed. Nothing but the pull of muscle, sinew, and bone, working together in harmony as the miles disappeared behind me. If the silence in my head lasted, I would never go back. I wouldn't be the first one to choose this form over the other. Maybe, if I ran far enough away, I would never have to hear again. I pushed my legs faster, letting Jacob Black disappear behind me. And that is where we close the book for the final time on Twilight Eclipse. I'm going to put in my reviews and thoughts from these 3 episodes that have been put together here for the YouTube version. Most weeks when I read it on Patreon, it's like a book club. I give my little thoughts on the chapter that we just read, and you can give yours in the comments on the Patreon as well. If you'd like to join in on that weekly, it's at patreon.com/downtosleep. Thank you so much for listening. Please do remember to hit that like and subscribe if you're going to head out now. And now here are my thoughts on all of these chapters for the final part of this book, and a bit more extra rain to keep you asleep in the night ahead. I hope that you've enjoyed this reading. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, good night. I really liked the ending of this episode, and I do enjoy the parts with Charlie and Bella, the father and daughter thing. I think we've really seen Charlie grow as a dad. He's made some pretty questionable choices throughout the book in the ways that he acts and talks to her, but he's this great kind of grey character, not morally, but just in the way that he behaves sometimes, a little bit immature, a little bit childish. But I always love it when we get these quiet moments between the two of them, and his love for her just becomes so clear, you know? And it makes it quite painful to think of him losing her. This was a very interesting episode, and kind of an emotional one. We've been reading this for so long now that it was actually quite powerful to have Bella finally choosing, and not only admitting through these chapters that she loves Jacob, but then also accepting that it's not enough and that she loves Edward more, and she needs Edward, more importantly. That is just her person forever and ever, and because she's experienced what it's like to be without him, she knows how badly she needs him and that she can't survive without him. And that was interesting. Edward, as always, is being a saint, allowing her these moments with Jacob, allowing her to feel her emotions about it, and just holding her whilst she cries over another boy, which is huge. But, he's over 100 years old. He has the experience and the wisdom to take it as it is. I think we can all agree that Jacob would probably never hold Bella while she cried over how much she loved Edward, And the more I think about it, the more it shows Edward as this, angelic, ethereal, otherworldly being, like a statue, like he's described as so many times, because he doesn't have this same kind of toxic emotional leaning that both Bella and Jacob do. There were moments in this that really remind you of how morally grey and slightly toxic those characters are, especially with each other, and how Edward has just lived through so much. We can't really fathom the kind of depths of the things that this guy's been through over those years, and the stuff that he's endured, which, as we know, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, and this is a very strong character. So, yeah, it was good. It was good to dive even further into this one. And of course, the name drop of "I can't fight with an eclipse," or whatever he said, was very goofy but cute. I really enjoyed Eclipse. It might be my favourite so far. I prefer it to New Moon. The first is a classic though, and it's been so long since I read it, but thinking back on everything that happens, that first book is really good. But this one was fun, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and it helped you get down to sleep. I thought it was pretty interesting, the meadow scene, and Edward sort of giving in to his urges seemed slightly out of character, to the point where I expected it to be revealed as a dream or nightmare sequence. I'm not sure if it was perhaps a test, that he was testing if it was what Bella really wanted, was to do those things for other people, to get married and to do everything the right way. It seemed strange to me, but I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did. I like their ending, and I can't wait to see what happens next, because everything, as of now, is kind of up in the air, which leaves only one thread: the Volturi. And perhaps that's where we'll be heading in the next book. But I'm sure there will be some other surprises as well. Overall, this book was a fantastic and fun read, and I look forward to seeing how it develops in the next, because I have felt like the writing has kind of come along and gone more that way since the first book. So, we'll start that soon. Until next time, thank you so much for the support and for supporting this series, and we'll go on that next adventure together very soon. Until then, thank you, and good night.